Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass Podcast. This for UFC Vegas 25. I'm Paul Shaughnessy, joined in studio for the last time in a long time by Cody Saftic.
Last time in a long time. Yeah, certainly last time ever in this studio, but I know you and Pat are going on to bigger and better things. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. But yeah, for the time being, last show with my main man, Paul, for the foreseeable future. We will still be doing the audio shows, but in terms of being in studio and having a beer and hanging out, we'll at least have to put that on hold. And yeah, we got a nice little offering from the UFC. Last week, things were going good until they weren't. Started off the Friday with a Clay Collard hit. Great times. Our boy Cassius Clay coming through.
And it rolled right into the prelims, smashing the prelims. Things. My boy Kazula Vargas coming through. Yeah, as a plus 210 underdog for me.
Yeah. Things seem to be going good.
I hit your Randy Brown by submission.
And that's where things were like peaked off. That was like jumping the shark. He hits plus 500, plus 550 on my book. Perfect. We got a sweet little parlay. We still got parlays intact. We are looking good. And then funny story. So watching the fight, my brother's buddy comes over. Whatever. We're watching the fight. He's having a couple beers, having a couple tokes. Whatever. Watches the fight. We got the Jimmy Crute fight up. Jimmy rolls his ankle, and this guy's just like, "Oh, I'll be right back." Gets up, walks outside. Gone for like 10 minutes. My brother's like, "Oh, I'm going to go check my buddy." Goes inside. This dude's like curled over, side of the house, green, puking. My brother's like, "Oh, you have too many beers?" He's like, "I don't know what happened, man." He's like, I saw like the guy's ankle roll, and I was just like, I don't know. Something came over me, like totally greened out. Like, what? Don't know. Takes another 10 minutes, recomposes himself, collects himself, comes back inside. We're like, "You're all good." He's like, "Yeah, I'm all good." Sits down. Weidman fight starts. Weidman, and I hate to laugh because like maybe a career-ending injury. The Crute fight, he greens out.
Oh my God!
Comes back, recollects himself, comes back, sits down.
Came back for the wrong fight.
Well, how could you know, man? Because the Crute thing's like a once in a doesn't happen very often. I mean, we saw it happen one time in Bellator with Michael Chandler. But outside of that, it's like it's not something you see very often. And when he just saw the replay, I guess, of like the ankle curling over, greens him out. So now he sees the Weidman fight immediately after. And he was just like, no bueno. And for me, again, this is like I've already jumped the shark. Randy Brown got a submission. Now I lose the Jimmy Crute fight, kills a lot of parlays. The Zhang fight, that killed it. So in terms of making a solid effort last week, and it fell apart late. So hopefully we can get back on the winning ways this time around.
Yeah, I came out a little bit ahead thanks to Cassius Clay Collard. But, yeah, onwards and upwards. And props to Usman. I had a big bet, which that was the big one for me. That ate into basically all of the profits I had accruing, or I had been accruing on the card. I didn't think he was going to knock him out. I mean, after the fact, you see Rodrigo Dam did the exact same thing to Jorge Masvidal. The exact same setup, the exact same everything. Like so many years ago. I didn't think he was going to do it. He did. Props to him. It was a beautiful knockout. What else can you say besides that? All right, main event. We've got Dominic Reyes taking on Yuri Prochazka. Prochazka, a minus 125 favorite. Reyes can be had for plus 105. Dominic Reyes is kind of like a tale of two Dominics, really. Like the one against John Jones, performance of his career, everything is looking onwards and upwards. John Jones is leaving the division. He comes in as a 3-1 favorite against the legendary Polish power, Jan Blachowicz, and he tasted that legendary Polish power. Obviously, he probably shouldn't have been a massive favorite in that spot, but it's interesting seeing him. Prochazka has one UFC fight. It's knocking out Volkan Oezdemir, a guy who Reyes had a split decision, very close fight against. Prochazka's, people like this term apparently, a shit-eating wild man. Like, he's coming out, he's looking for your soul, he's trying to take your head off early on in fights. Is Reyes going to be able to take it? Is his chin compromised? The one big concern I would have for him is he's given up like 3.5 inches of reach to Prochazka. Like, Reyes is 6'5", but his arms are pretty short for that frame. I don't have a great read on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I don't have a great read either. So first and foremost, I'm a huge Yuri Prochazka fan. Follow this guy, back him, had him in the Volkan Oezdemir fight, and he comes in as the underdog. A lot of people are backing Volkan. On paper, huge celebration moment. On paper, we get that knockout. But what a sweat it was in the entirety leading up to that. Because like you said, shit-eating wild man. This guy just comes berserk rage mode, comes at you. Your over-unders. You're always looking to bet the under when this guy fights. And he fights like very much an under 1.5 type fighter. He just comes at you. So in a 5-round situation, it's probably going to favor Dominic Reyes.
If he can survive that early on.
Yeah, if you can survive. And on one hand, dude won 5 rounds with John Jones. On the other hand, it's like so did Thiago Santos and so did Anthony Smith and so did guys that shouldn't have been fighting John Jones.
The question about that John Jones fight is John Jones just like, is he missing something?
Playing with his food, fights to his opponent's level.
He's done that before. Obviously, he did it with OSP and so on and so forth. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see when John goes and fights my boy Frankie Murder. He doesn't want that fight right now.
Yeah, and again, I think when you look at that fight, you know how you mentioned it's a tale of two Dominics, and we've seen him look really good in the OSP fight, and then we see him look theoretically good in the John Jones fight. Won the first 2 rounds. A lot of people thought he won the first 3 rounds, but all the same, his cardio didn't really check out in that fight, and then Jan Blachowicz just blows him out of the water. So you have the tale of these 2 guys, and it reminds me a lot of Kelvin Gastelum, where it's like the version of Kelvin Gastelum that fought Israel Adesanya is a top 5 or top 3 guy in the world, and certainly had a career best performance on that night. But the version of Kelvin Gastelum that usually shows up, pulls his punches, is not looking to really engage from the outside, has troubles with these bigger, longer, rangy middleweights. And for Dominic Reyes, I mean, the guy that generally shows up outside of that John Jones fight, he's low output. He's super low output, and I just can't really fully get behind it. So when you look back and you look at the Volkan Oezdemir fight, hard argument that he loses the Volkan Oezdemir fight, but it's really low striking stats, low by the numbers, not a whole lot happens, not a great performance by him. He beats Chris Weidman. It's a middleweight Chris Weidman, kind of at the tail end of his career, moving up to 205 pounds, so it looks good on paper, but not a really significant victory. And then the John Jones fight is what it is, and the Jan Blachowicz fight. Even the first round, he loses the first round to Jan, but he's not looking to engage, right?
No.
Very much like Kelvin in the fights after Israel Adesanya, he's just not really looking to let his hands go. Yuri does not have that problem. So Yuri's going to bum rush him. Yuri's probably going to take these early couple rounds. You probably look at this fight from a live betting standpoint, and that Yuri's probably going to win these first couple rounds. And then after that, if Dominic is still around, you would figure that the fight could turn in his favor. But then you talk about the durability. Well, Jan hits like a hammer. We know that. But is Jan a power puncher? Is Jan suddenly a guy that's like known for his finishing abilities?
No, he was more of a decision guy for years.
Forever he was a decision guy. And he knocked out Luke Rockhold, which I guess, again, 205 pounds. He's like, not the most significant thing. Took a split over Jacare Souza. Like, I don't know where I'm seeing the power, and then just flatlines Dominic Reyes. So if Reyes does have a chin issue, Yuri's going to exploit it. If he has a volume issue and comes off to a slow start, Yuri's going to exploit him. It's whether or not he's able to survive those couple early rounds. So I am going to go Yuri in this spot. You know, I've backed Dominic Reyes in every single one of his fights, the John Jones one included. As you'll remember, I backed him in that spot, and I got a lot of messages being like, you got robbed, but I didn't. He lost that fight. You know, he lost 3-2. It was a close fight, but again, John has a tendency to doing that with opponents, and then I backed him in the Jan fight, and he let me down. So he's a guy... Jan. He's a guy that's, I know you were on Polish Power, but Reyes has been my guy.
I didn't think it was going to go like that, though. I thought Jan would just be able to, if they went 5 rounds, I thought Jan would take over late, and the odds were suggesting, I figured maybe we lose the first 2, hopefully we win the last 3. I didn't expect him to knock him out in the second round like that, though.
What we want here is we want Yuri to beat Dominic Reyes and then have Yuri fight Jan. And then there's another fight where you probably just bet it live, and that it's really hard to put Jan away. So if Yuri comes at him and gives him everything he can, he takes it, he's going to put him away. Dom, I'm not 100% sure he does take it. And even if he does, you saw his output fall off completely in the latter half of the John Jones fight. So again, this is 5 rounds. That plays towards him because of the way Yuri fights.
I'd be taking Jan in that spot.
Yeah, no, I agree.
See what the odds are.
And you'd get a good price, I think.
Well, maybe not. He's coming off of, dominating win against Dominic Reyes and then beating Adesanya. That's gonna,
a middleweight.
That's going to show up on the sports books for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I hear
But
you.
I guess...
You're taking Yuri, though? Is that what your official pick was?
I'll take Yuri.
I'm going to take Yuri as well. I'm leaning towards that under 1.5, but honestly, I'd rather the under 2.5, which is not as good of a price, I'm sure. The official pick will be Yuri, but the confidence level is just not quite there. This could go either way.
I don't see an under 2.5 available anywhere yet, but it's early in the week. Obviously, we're recording a day earlier this week than usual. All right, we got Giga Chikadze taking on Cub Swanson, -150 Giga, +130 Cub. I saw it was like -185 Giga last night, +160 Swanson. So action is coming in on Swanson. Obviously, Giga, you go through, the fights that he's had here. I mean, matchmakers have been Giga Chikadze, real friends all along the way. The Jamie Simmons fight last time out, that was a layup. Omar Morales, pretty competitive fight. Erwin Rivera, pretty competitive, close fight. Like he was supposed to smash, at least in the Erwin Rivera
Erwin's
fight.
5'6". It turns out Erwin murdered a guy though, so he's obviously hard as fuck. In hindsight, he's gonna give anybody a fight.
I mean, the best way to beat Cub historically is take him down, sub him. That's not really an option here. I can understand why that action was coming in on the plus 160s on Cub Swanson. We've just seen him. If he's able to turn this into a war, high output, maybe the vet pulls one over on the rising prospect here. But yeah, another fight I don't have a great lean on. What about you?
Yeah, not a great lean either. I mean, it would scream that you would want to take that underdog shot because, first of all, Cub Swanson's got a lot of good variables going his way. I mean, he's a savvy veteran. He's got a lot of experience on his side, but he's also got the ground game advantage. I mean, with Giga, and I keep saying this time and time again, why would anybody want to stand with him? Like, you need to get him to the ground. But, as you mentioned, matchmakers, even before the UFC, matchmakers on the regional scene were giving him the 0-16 opponents. Like, you know, he was built pretty soft, and then he comes into the UFC, he takes on Jamal Emmers. It's like, Emmers has a clear wrestling advantage and then just chooses not to use it. Well, Erwin Rivera doesn't have a wrestling advantage and just, you know, again, is not looking to take the fight to the ground. Omar Morales' fight figured to have a ground game advantage, didn't really employ it, and it was to his detriment. He hasn't really fought anybody with a ground game to actually go out there and do something about it. So with Cub Swanson, I mean, he figures to probably be outside of Jamal Emmers, one of the better wrestlers that he's fought in his career. And he's a BJJ black belt. So if the fight does hit the ground, Cub's going to be comfortable there. He's got these experience of going 5-round fights, you know, headlining shows, all that experience. Like, yeah, he's definitely a live underdog. And then with Cub Swanson, as much as we always write him off, like, oh man, Cub's done. Cub's got these injuries. He's always got one left in the tank, you know? Comes in as a sizable underdog against Crone Gracie and just beats him pillar to post. Then in that Daniel Pineda fight, Daniel Pineda opens up on him hard in the early portion of the round, but Cub survives. What Cub survives, and Pineda gets tired, Cub takes over, right? So he's not completely shot to bits, and he screams live underdog. I just don't know if I want to take that shot because, like, the problem that I'm seeing with Giga is that guys don't want to strike with him. Guys are super tentative as soon as they get in there and they see him standing in front of them. And it's perhaps that he's a tricky fighter. It's perhaps that they're not getting a good read on him, but nobody's going out there and bum rushing him. Now, at 145 pounds, dude's 6 feet tall, right? He's super tall for the weight class. And again, he's a bit of a tricky fighter, Kyokushin black belt. He's got that rangy kickboxing game. And Cub coming in much shorter man, shorter reach. I could honestly see a world where Giga just stays to the outside and picks away at him. So now Cub, as we mentioned, he's got the ground game advantage. He needs to use that wrestling. And one thing that we're not seeing with Giga, because he's not fighting these wrestlers, is that he is trying to make a lot of improvements on the takedown defense. You didn't see it in the Emmers fight, but what you saw in the Omar Morales fight, the 2 shots that he took, yeah, it looked like he'd improved, you know, vastly. He's got that long frame. He keeps his fight standing. He can outstrike Cub Swanson. But Cub's going to have the volume. If the fight does hit the ground, Cub's going to have the advantage. Cub's got everything that would scream live underdog. And so for our last show in the studio, I'll label this one a dogger pass.
Dogger pass situation. What I was looking at there was one book that I have access to that still had a plus 163 hanging. I knew where that was heading, but they've adjusted. DraftKings Sportsbook, the only one with a plus 160 still available on the market as I look
Shout
across
out to DraftKings.
Best fight odds. So that seems like a decent play. I don't know if I want to take... I definitely don't want to take the plus 110s I see out there. Yeah, but yeah, dogger pass situation. All right, we got Ion Cutelaba taking on Dustin Jacoby, minus 130 for the shit-eating wild man himself. Ion Cutelaba, Dustin Jacoby can be had for plus 110. Here's the thing about Ion. When he came in, it's just like, this guy's a Moldovan wrestler, has a real nice wrestling pedigree.
European Sambo champion.
Yeah. He just likes going out there and swinging bombs, and that really did not work out against Magomed Ankalaev. But fair be fair, Magomed Ankalaev, we said it the last time he fought, that's a top 5 guy in this light heavyweight division for sure.
You've been saying that for a while, but he's proving it now.
This guy is very, very live. Like, he could fight Jan Blachowicz tomorrow, and I wouldn't be shocked if he got the W. To be perfectly honest, I think he's right there with all of these guys. Dustin Jacoby, obviously a really, really weird path for his career. Was in the UFC, fizzled out, ended up a glory kickboxer. Really made some serious improvements. That last fight out though, against Max Grishin. I mean, we were heavy on Jacoby.
Greasy.
Had him in just a ton of parlays. He was all over it. And, man, I felt really, really fortunate to come away with the victory. Yeah. Some people scored it for Max Grishin.
Most of Twitter seemed to have.
And I don't think Max Grishin is some sort of, like, world beater at this division. Is this a spot where Ion Cutelaba gets back on track? I saw that this was like straight pick 'em, and it seems like early action is at least pushing the Moldovan to be the favorite.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with that and take Ion Cutelaba as a favorite. He's got a lot of things that you like about him in that he's aggressive. He throws absolute heat. He's got some decent wrestling, decent grappling in that he's very, very strong. He can get his opponent to the ground, but everything he does, he just uses way too much strength, way too much muscle, way too much gas. Mm-hmm. And then he tires out. Once he tires out, he's a terrible fighter. But when you look at him at his best, like let's say the Khalil Roundtree fight, just takes him down and smashes him, right? That would be the key to victory here. Magomed Ankalaev, how do you beat Ankalaev? Do you want to stand with him? Not exactly a great path to victory. Do you want to grapple with him? Not a great path to victory. Do you want to try to drag this guy into deep waters? Not a great path to victory, right? He's kind of got you beat in all those areas. In this fight, he does have the wrestling advantage, does have the grappling advantage. And even though his cardio is pretty poor, Dustin Jacoby's cardio is not very good himself. So what you have the tail is of, if Cutelaba comes out and wants to strike with Jacoby's the more refined, more polished kickboxer, he probably beats him in the striking match. But if Cutelaba comes out here, makes this an MMA fight, uses his grappling, mixes it in, he can land those big bombs, he can land those chopping leg kicks, but then get a hold of this guy and toss him to the ground. If you look at Dustin Jacoby, I mean, he's been fortunate in that he's been largely fighting in kickboxing, in glory kickboxing for a while now, right? But when he came back to MMA, he's got a win over Cody East, the rapist, who briefly fought in the UFC and was winless. That one was at heavyweight.
Was he convicted?
Not convicted, and that's why the UFC... not convicted. You can read into it. And he ended up picking up... No, he ended up picking up domestic abuse after this as well. But the UFC did briefly put it aside, Todd Stout style. They didn't want to go down that road.
I saw the video and all that. It didn't look good.
Winless in the UFC, didn't give a good of account of himself. The Walt Harris fight, it's like, oh, baby. Anyways,
I heard the audio from it.
Wins that one at heavyweight, right? Drops down and he fights on Contender Series against Ty Flores. Now, this is a very winnable fight for him. He comes out early looking good, and then he fatigues. And we always talk about guys at Colorado and just treading at altitude and the cardio. Like, it's not quite there. But Ty Flores was not going to exploit any wrestling deficiencies in his game. Then he draws Justin Ledet. Right, Paul, Justin Ledet. The same Justin Ledet, the former pro boxer. The guy that walks around with a t-shirt that says, I'd rather be boxing than doing jiu-jitsu. Like, discredits MMA as a whole. Comes out there and clowns around. Right, so he defeats Justin Ledet, a boxer. He beats him with the leg kicks. But again, this is not a threat to actually take you down and exploit you. Then he gets Maxim Grishin, and we're all over him because Maxim Grishin's not going to take him down. Look how bad Grishin looked in his debut against Marcin Tybura, again, a heavyweight, but we're all over him. And he goes out there, and he probably loses the fight against Maxim Grishin. Now he's a write-off, man. He's a write-off. And neither of these guys really had the chops to exploit him on the ground. Mm. But Ion does. Now, the one question is, if Ion doesn't get this thing done in the first round or two, is he just going to become a punching bag, unable to get fight to the ground?
Or Ion just never shoots for a takedown because he's just like, I want to be an action fighter, which seems to be what he's trying to do with his career.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, though. He's 27 years old. And at some point, it's like, what if this guy was to start putting it together a little bit? Whereas Jacoby's 33. We know grappling's his deficiency. We know that he has a cardio issue. He doesn't seem to be making any vast improvements fight to fight. And there's a reason why he fanned out of the UFC once upon a time way back when, losing to guys like Clifford Starks. Just like it wasn't at this level. Now, has he done a good job of working his way back to the UFC? Yeah. Did he have an okay little glory kickboxing run as well? Yeah, for sure. But if Ion just decides to fight a decent game plan, which, listen, I know a lot of people are probably sitting at home laughing now, Ion, fight a decent game plan. But like, if he just decides to wrestle and grapple a little bit here, he's going to have big pockets of success. So it is close to even money. It's currently minus 130 Ion Cutelaba, and that's where my heart would be leaning on this one.
Sean Strickland takes on Krzysztof Jotko, minus 260 Strickland, plus 200 Jotko. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Sean Strickland. Since he came back from his motorcycle accident, the injury, right? It's like, that's a long layoff for a guy, but he's still pretty young. He's still only 30 years old. Comes back, it's a long layoff. It's like 2 years almost to the date. And he fights Jack Marshman. And in the Jack Marshman fight, he absolutely beats him pillar to post, lands well over 100 significant strikes, absolutely butchers him. But I remember people sitting at home being like, this is not a good performance. Look how much he's talking in there. Look how much he's just playing around. He should just go for the finish. But what I liked about that performance was it was him just shaking off the rust. He didn't need a quick first-round finish of Jack Marshman. What he needed was to bank good 3 rounds, test the cardio, get the confidence going again. And you could literally see in real time the confidence growing and the combinations start landing. And it just like he starts to flow out there, and it's all good performance stuff out of him, right? That's what you want to see. So now his next fight, he comes out there against Brendan Allen. This is obviously a step up in competition. It's going to be a tough fight. Brendan Allen's no pushover. But we're on Sean Strickland on the basis of he got a good 3 rounds. He went the distance against Marshman, but lands 106 significant strikes and is control every step of the way. He comes in there against Brendan Allen, who's spent the whole time at Sanford MMA with Henry Hoof, working on his grappling. And again, masterpiece performance, man. 94 significant strikes landed, knocks him down, knocks him out a minute and a half into the second round. He had already landed 94 significant strikes, mixes in a takedown for good measure. This is a kid that spent years at Dan Henderson's camp in Temecula, California, the former Team Quest. Takedown defense doesn't seem to be an issue for him. I think he shows like a career percentage of 81%. But the last guy to take down Sean Strickland in a fight was Kamaru Usman 4 years ago.
I hear he's
right?
pretty good, that guy.
Apparently he's pretty good. Now he's a welterweight, and Sean Strickland is an 85er now, but all the same, man. It's like, okay, takedown defense hasn't traditionally been a problem for him, right? Hasn't fought a ton of wrestlers, but I think he's going to be good in that aspect. His ground game, pretty good. His striking, pretty good. His chin, pretty good. Outside of a Zaleski dos Santos, like spinning wheel kick that catches him, you know, he seemed to be a durable enough guy. The motorcycle accident was the question mark of how do you come back from that, but he seems to have come back really good. And the guys that I know that have trained with him, like Chris Curtis, everybody, Sam Alvey, they all wow in amazement about how good this guy is in the gym. And you hear him on record often say, the day that I show up to the octagon as the guy that I am in the gym, then I'll be a contender. It's just, it's putting it together. But as I said, 2-fight winning streak now since the accident, confidence rising. I like what I see him putting together. Jotko's a guy that's serviceable. He's been there. He's done that. He's fought at a high level. But one has to wonder that he's kind of just slowing down a little bit. He was known for his karate. He was known for his striking, his counterpunching abilities. Maybe not karate. It's more like a Polish Muay Thai style, I guess. But his durability seems to be an issue now. He doesn't really want to strike as much. He's a lot more tentative, and he's looking to rely on his grappling. So Jotko's going to come out here and try to take down Sean Strickland. He's going to try to press him up against the cage, take him down.
All those years at Dan Henderson's gym probably going to come in handy for Strickland. Keep it on the feet.
And then if he does keep it on the feet, stays at the outside, he's gonna butcher him. He's got a really nice sharp jab. He's going to stick it in his face, keep it going. You know,
reach is pretty much the exact same between these two. So, and
what you saw in the Marshman fight, 106 significant strikes over 15. He's just letting them go.
And he fights really long. Like
and then the Brendan Allen fight, it was ×2, like twice as good. And if he comes out here and looks even better, we're looking good. If he comes out looking as good, we still could be okay. But Sean Strickland 260, huge price tag. So again, I have to make a pick, and the pick is Sean Strickland. But in terms of like, value. Is this a bet? Is this a top ticket play? No, it's not a top ticket play. At 260, the value's probably beaten away from it. But I do see Sean Strickland growing, improving as a fighter, and this would be a good task for him.
I tend to agree. I think I like Strickland. I like him to win. Not too excited about -260 though. You could probably say the same about this next one. We have Merab Dvalishvili taking on Cody Saftic. -255 Merab, plus 215 for Cody Saftic. Good for Merab last time out, taking on John Dodson. A fight where he wasn't able to, get like 10 takedowns, because that's what he's done. I think he got like 12 in the previous fight.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got the stats right here.
It's 11.
He had 13 against Gustavo Lopez, 12 against Casey Kenny, 11 against Frankie Sands in a fight that he somehow lost. I don't know how you get 11 takedowns and still lose the fight, but, these are the judges. This is the sport that we choose to bet on sometimes. But last time out against Dodson, obviously a former flyweight, but only 2 takedowns, but he was still able to come away victorious. My biggest concern in this spot is what if he's not able to get takedowns against Cody Saftic, who has a pretty decent wrestle game, collegiate wrestler and all of that. What happens in that situation? Who's the better striker between these two? I think it's not as easy as the -255 price tag would suggest if I was going to play anything, and I haven't played it, but it would be Merab by decision because the man loves himself a decision, which, as I see right now at the time of this recording, pays, it's like minus 125. That would be, if I was to play anything on it, that's where I would go, but don't love it, to be honest. I think this is, we're seeing Merab taking a real step up, and I think he's made tons of improvements. I think he's good. I'm just not convinced that he can just, like, absolutely dominate wrestling exchanges against Cody Stamman. What about you?
Well, I mean, he might be able to dominate these wrestling exchanges about anybody is what he's been facing. But yeah, I got a gut feeling that Cody Stamman pulls this one off. The play here is the fight goes the distance, but that's not a reasonable price tag. So
fight goes to decision minus 275.
That's what I mean. I mean, odds makers on the same side. Dvalishvili, like you said, he loves himself a decision. He's a grinding machine. But Cody Stamman, he's proven to kind of be a decision guy himself. I do agree with the assessment that Cody Stamman is the better striker. It's whether or not he can keep this fight standing. It's whether or not he can use that takedown defense. And from what Dvalishvili's proven, it's like you can't. And listen, Frankie Saenz wrestled collegiately as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was a good college wrestler. Took him down 11 times. Ricky Simone out of Portland, Oregon, the other Team Quest, like the guy knows how to wrestled collegiately, takes him down 6 times. Tyrion Ware's a boxer. Brad Cotone is a generalist. Casey Kinney's a little undersized, I suppose, but 12 takedowns against him is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned the John Dodson fight, and that one's important here, is that he only gets the 2 takedowns, and he's 2 for 20. So the better level of competition he's fighting, they're eventually going to stuff these takedowns. And when they stuff these takedowns, what can he fall back on? Now, he does have that like spinning back fist knockout over Rofion Stotts, like 15 seconds. But that's not a marker of he has good striking. He landed a spinning back fist one time in 15 seconds.
Don't forget that his #1 training partner probably hasn't been in the gym all that much recently. Aljamain has got...
He can't go to the gym. Because if he was, people would be like, did you say you were hurt? Or did you
no, he had surgery. I saw pictures. I follow Aljo on Twitter.
Yeah.
He had surgery for like a displaced like disc in his back. So he's going to be out for a bit. But that means that he's not in the gym, not putting in the grind with Merab. So that's another thing, taking, an elite level competitor that you put in those blood, sweat, and tears in the gym with. He's not there for this.
Yeah, and so it's interesting you say that because Cody Stamman fought Aljamain Sterling and he got hit with the Sulawov stretch, right? Essentially a knee bar. And it was just like, oh, goddamn. And so I want that as a takeaway. Like, even though Aljamain's not in the gym with Jamal Dvalishvili, the coaching staff's the same. He's a training partner. Maybe they analyze some of that stuff. But when I went back to watch it, Stamman's holding his own in the wrestling and the grappling exchanges the first round, and then he starts to fatigue. But is that a knock on his cardio, or is that just Aljamain pushes a hell of a pace? Ask Peter Yan. The first 10 minutes of that fight are a hell of a pace, and then he himself gets tired out trying to do it. But against Cody Stamman, it's like he actually didn't look bad in that first round. Now, I know it's like, well, he's given up takedowns to lesser men. In fact, he's gotten taken down in his last 2 fights. But even when he gets taken down, like, he's not a fish out of water there. The reason why Merab Dvalishvili has been scoring 12, 13 takedowns on guys is when he gets the takedown, they generally pop back up. They generally and he just gets on them and he drags them back to the ground.
He's able to out-muscle them, just like nothing.
Exactly, he just muscles them back, right? But they're always...
The technique isn't exactly elite or anything. He's just stronger than a mule.
Yeah, but they always get back up. And so what you're seeing with bad judging a lot of the time is that even though he's getting takedowns, he's not getting any ground and pound. And you look at his numbers, I mean, it's low. 15 minutes with John Dodson, lands 50. That was one of his better efforts. The Casey Kinney fight, 63, Katona, 55. It's all that 60, maybe 70 point range, right? 70 strike range. And Stamman's not like necessarily a whole lot higher, but he might weasel it, He just might work them, get up, land the better strikes, get taken down again, work your way back up, make some of the better strikes. If you stuff a few of these takedowns, if you make him work, if you can outstrike him, he can make this a close competitive fight. And so when you think close competitive fight and you look at a plus 215 price tag, it's like, okay, I'm certainly intrigued. So on a card that, again, the odds makers usually gets it right, especially nowadays the lines are released so far in advance that a lot of these favorites you do tend to agree with. But this one's intriguing. So I'm looking at Cody Stamman as an underdog play, but I understand the sweat it's going to be because Dvalishvili just fights the style that we love, Paul. We love that style, right? I just don't know if he's going to get over the hump and be an Islam Makhachev or be a Khabib or Nurmagomedov, or if he's just going to be a relatively mid-level grinder.
That's all fair, well and good. I will say though, like Merab is 9K on DraftKings.
Wow, because
if you're playing DraftKings, the guy is DraftKings gold.
Stateman's usually terrible.
Like if you can get 10 takedowns on anybody, that's somebody you should definitely focus your energies on. Like I don't know if he's going to be able to do that exact same thing, but
what's better?
If you don't roster him and he does go off for like 160 points, like you're pretty much pooched.
What's the difference in a round now because of the new scoring between getting 4 takedowns in one round as opposed to getting 1 takedown and having 4 minutes of top control?
I don't know the exact...
Because he doesn't rack up a whole lot of top control.
If we go through this, so Sainz, he had 99 points in a loss. Yeah. Simone, he had 73 points in a loss.
A bullshit loss, by the way.
Yeah. Ware, 129. Katona, 124. Kenny, 136. Lopez, 148. It's just like, if he goes off, you're screwed. You might as well just like... set all of your DraftKings lineups on fire. People are going to own him.
It's hard to bet against him, man. You're talking me out of it. You're talking me out of a dog play.
No, I'm talking about on DraftKings.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, fuck, man. The guy just grabs a hold of you and peels you to the ground. Like, how do you bet against that?
I wouldn't really like him as I wouldn't like Stamman, to be honest, as a DraftKings play.
No, I agree. Because if he wins, it's going to be a squeaky split.
Yeah.
It's going to be a close fight. Hopefully, like the
and
Song
he'll be
Yadong fight.
negating the wrestling, essentially.
But you see in the Yadong fight, he's down 2, apparently, according to the judges, going into the third. And just puts it on him hard in the third. So if cardio is not an issue, he's only got 3 rounds to work with. So he's got to hope to turn the tide at least by the midway point of the second. It can be a tough task, but at plus 215, I think it's generous enough.
To answer your question about the DraftKings scoring, I just looked into this. If he actually did have control time for 4 straight minutes, he would score 7.2 points. And each takedown is worth 5 points.
Yeah. So you had 20 points as opposed to 7.
Yeah.
You want the takedowns, and that's why a guy like that's going to score high. Is that
of course?
And we talked about Tony Gravely 2 weeks ago. He had the same style. It's like he doesn't really hold these guys down, but similar to Miles Johns, he's just like he chain wrestles, takes you down, you pop back up, he works you a little bit more, takes you back down. And that was it. It was a scramble fest. He scores 5-6 takedowns, then gets the finish.
Yeah, it's like my boy Khabib. Like he didn't necessarily always hold you down. He got better at doing that later in his career, but earlier in his career, guys would pop up. The problem is he would never let go of that body lock, and he would just drag you down again. 21 takedowns against Abel Trujillo.
Yeah, with a broken foot.
I need that top.
And
shot.
Abel actually wrestled in junior college.
The 21st takedown. I need that when they do like UFC, like NBA top shots. I need that one.
Yeah,
that's the golden grail for me. All right, we got Polyana Boetlho taking on Luana Carolina minus 220. Boetlho plus 185. Carolina. I guess. Maybe people are thinking that Boetlho has put in some work with Colby Chaos Covington, who apparently she's actually got a boyfriend. She posted that on her Instagram, so his post about that being his new girl, fabricated at best. Do you have a hot lean on this one? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Polyana gets the job done. The price tag's just too big to jump on her, right? I mean, 8-3. She's only 27 years old, so one would figure that she's still got some improvements to make. And you put her at a gym like American Top Team, again, she's going to be making these improvements. You also look at these losses, right? Jillian Robertson, former ATT fighter in her own right, she's got that grappling. She's got the BJJ black belt. She could pose problems. She's turned out to be a gatekeeper. But, I mean, she does a pretty good job of keeping said gate. And then Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia Calvillo missed weight for that fight, came in at 118 pounds, and was able to submit her in the first round. But, I mean, Calvillo's top of the food chain, a former top 3, top 5 fighter, and Jillian Robertson's at the very least a top 15 gatekeeper-type fighter. Those losses aren't huge. The wins over Pearl Gonzalez, impressive enough. Kondo, that does nothing for me. Laura Mueller, that also does nothing for me. But she's now starting to get seasoned in the UFC. So she should theoretically have the grappling advantage, right? When you look at Luana Carolina, she's a Muay Thai fighter, and she loves to throw volume. She's got volume for days, Paul, but physically she's not strong at all. And so just prior to her last fight, I mean, she was kind of seen as coming in against Ariane Lipski. They're both Muay Thai fighters. Lipski's proven to be a bust in the UFC so far. Carolina, she just won on... She won a Contender Series, and then she beat Cachoeira. A lot of volume in both of those fights.
We're all over her against Cachoeira because...
Volume, and she's fighting Cachoeira. But prior to the Lipski fight, this video surfaces of her strength and conditioning coach putting her through like a routine, and he's like, give me 10 push-ups, and she like fucking can't do it. Gets on the ground, does like 2 push-ups, and then it's just like, oh man.
Tough
like,
scene.
Yeah, form's no good, doesn't seem overly physically strong. But it doesn't matter, it's a Muay Thai fight, and she's got striking. She's gonna have better output than Lipski. And then the Lipski fight, Lipski just tosses her to the ground, and then she just like, it's the weirdest setup for a knee bar. She's literally just sitting on this girl, and Carolina just feeds her the leg, and she just falls back on it. So it really looks like she does not have any grappling, and she's not overly physically strong. Cardio looks all right? Volume striking looks all right. She's super long and rangy. That's all well and good. But if you clinch up with this girl and peel her to the ground, you're in trouble.
Which is exactly what Boetlho is going to do. Putting in those rounds with Colby Covington could come in handy.
So. Yeah, and being an American top team in general, where they're actually going to put a game plan together for you, and you can go out there and follow said game. Is she
putting in time with Colby, though? Because Colby's not at ATT.
No, he's at MMA Masters now. And obviously, after his comments, she's not looking to do any training with him. But Colby going to Colby, and it doesn't matter. The main thing is that she's at a good gym. She's got a lot of training partners getting ready for fights. She seems to be in physically good shape, and she's only 27. So whereas you can say, oh, man, I mean, she lost her last fight. It's like, okay, Jillian Robertson has something for fighters. She's like that barometer test. You beat her, you get over the hump. If not, you're just okay. And then the loss of Cynthia Calvillo, again, people were high on her going into the Calvillo fight. People thought she had a chance against Calvillo, and Calvillo's proven to be a pretty decent commodity, right? Mm-hmm. So that in itself is just so much more important than what Luana Carolina has, accrued in her career so far. I would have to go with Poliana Boetlho, but again, minus 220 is just not a very nice looking price tag. Whereas at least in the Stamman fight, I made it a dog or pass. I would take that dog shot there. In Carolina versus Poliana Boetlho, I'm not willing to do that. So the pick would be Boetlho. But again, I don't. It's women's MMA. It's low level. She hasn't looked necessarily all that good, but I do expect her to be a better version of herself coming out here and get the win.
All right, we got a fight that was actually booked a while ago. I believe we've talked about it on the show. There's so many cancellations sometimes that you get a little bit confused. But we have Luana Pinheiro taking on Ronda Markos, minus 170 Pinheiro, plus 145 Markos. Markos is a loser in 4 of her last 5 fights, and she has lost her last 3. A lot of people would probably argue that this is it's a massive step up in competition for Luana Pinheiro. But I think that what we saw from her on Contender Series, she's got hands. I think she's got like a judo background. On top of that, I think this is the UFC trying to serve some walking papers and put some shine on upcoming prospect. Everything that I've seen from Pinheiro, she looks like she's got some serious ceiling, serious potential. Mateus Nicolau obviously is her boyfriend as well. Training at ATT with some of the best people in the world. Onwards and upwards. I think minus 170 is fair. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think Ronda Markos has seen better days. I mean, as you're looking at her with a 10-10-1 record, she's okay. So where we talk about gatekeepers, right? And a girl like Jillian Robertson is being a gatekeeper. Ronda Markos was that gatekeeper. Ronda Markos was somebody that was that barometer test. And if you're legit, you'll get the victory over her. And if you're not, then you won't. But she just seems to be like on a downswing. I'm sure she's got other things on her brain. She's getting a little bit older. She's fought a long time in the UFC. She had been on record years ago talking about, I want to start a family, but it's either start a family or pursue my athletic career. And I'm juggling in my mind like what I should pursue. And she ended up going with athletic career. But one's got to think that now years later, she's probably starting to think those things over again. And if she gets released from the UFC, is she someone that signs with Bellator? Is she someone that signs with a losing record? Does she sign with one championship or PFL? Like, I don't know. I could see the end of the road getting there for her. There was a time where you and I would just bank on the streak, right? It was a win-loss streak. She won one, she lost one. This is someone who never won back-to-back fights in the UFC, and I never lost back-to-back fights in the UFC. But then, as I've talked about, the end starts to get near. She loses to Amanda Ribas. Okay, Ribas is supposed to be all right. She loses to Dern. Showed really low ring IQ in the Dern fight where she followed her to the ground. Didn't need to do that. Obviously, you don't want to go to the ground with Mackenzie Dern. Stuff the takedowns, box her up, right? Maybe boxes her up a bit, stuffs the takedown, and then follows her to the ground. Bad move, gets submitted. The Kanako Murata fight, Kanako Murata, good boxer, or decent boxer, but she's got that wrestling chops, puts the grind on her. You're seeing whereas Ronda Markos is just not competing with the next level, the next generation. And when you look at when you look at Luana Pinheiro, 27 years old, at ATT, like you mentioned, with Matus Nicolau. But this girl looks strong for 115 pounds, man. She's a natural finisher. Grappling looks good. She has a lot of submission victories. But she's also got a nice little stretch of knockouts. And it's not like she's fighting necessarily a bad level of competition. Helen Harper, Bellator veteran, decent striker. Goes out there, knocks her in the first round. That's okay. Stephanie Frosto, the younger sister of, the former Bellator champion. It's like, or Zawala Frosto, Gurgel, 1 point. She was married to George. It's like, she's not fighting the worst level, but she's going out there and looking really good at that level, right? So Markos is a huge step up in competition for her, and is she ready to pass that test? It looks like a lot of the other girls fighting Ronda that need that pass. A lot of these strong Brazilians with good grappling and good striking seem to beat her. Ronda just loads up the right hand, super tentative, doesn't throw enough, and it becomes she telegraphs it. It becomes super predictable. The wrestling, just okay. Offensively, it's getting worse. Defensively, not all that good. Grappling, little suspect. I think Pinheiro can exploit her in a lot of different areas. So minus 170 seems fair enough. And I guess I would go with Luana. But not a huge confidence level because, again, women's MMA, middling. You have a savvy veteran against a debuting fighter. But I'm going to agree with the line here.
We got Gabriel Benitez taking on Jonathan Pearce. Benitez is minus 200. Pearce can be had for plus 170. Gone are the days of us getting Mowgli at dog money. It's gone. I mean, he's just super, super solid all the way around. Pearce obviously coming off of that second, I was a pretty somewhat surprising. He got absolutely just dusted by Lozon in his debut, and then it was a bit of a stretch of time in between that fight and then returning to the cage, and he looked a hell of a lot better against Kai Kamaka. Does that say more about Kai Kamaka? I'm not entirely sure. The under in this fight is only at 1.5 rounds. I'm going to pick my boy Mowgli. I just think he's perennially underrated, but I wouldn't say they're really underrating it because he's at minus 200 in this spot. What's your take?
Yeah, I feel like Jonathan Pearce could be considered a live underdog in that he comes in against Joe Lozon and gets sparked. And this is Joe Lozon's retirement fight. He's on a 4-fight losing streak. He's not been looking good. He's the underdog against Jonathan Pearce. And win or lose, he's sailing off into the sunset. The fight's in Boston, and Joe Lozon in Boston just... it's like sea-level Kane. It's like there's a mystical being around it, a little bit of aura around it, and Joe Lozon goes out there and cold cocks him. So now everyone's written him off completely. He comes out as a sizable underdog against Kai Kamaka. What do you see about him? He's a MMA lab guy in Arizona. He's just like a stereotypical lab guy. He's got good cardio. He's got good wrestling, decent wrestling, and a good grind. He's able to grind on these guys. So him versus Kai Kamaka, early on maybe looks a little bit out of it, but he just starts grinding on him, and Kai gets really tired. Kai took the fight on short notice. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Jonathan Pearce is just able to wear that grind on him, and when he starts grinding on him, that's when he has his most success. He's someone that's going to be a live underdog if he can get this fight to the ground and outlast his opponent. It's that this is a tough fight in Gabriel Benitez, who... One, a guy that's campaigning at 155 pounds, 145 pounds, big, strong, thick dude.
Kicks like a mule.
Kicks like a mule. Javier Mendez going on record to say, Javier Mendez is a former kickboxing champion, world champion, who goes on to create one of the best MMA camps of all time. For him to say this is the hardest kicker I've ever worked with is, for a lightweight as well, is just a huge feather in your cap. But beyond that, think about the guys that have walked in those walls that have helped him with his takedown defense and his wrestling in general. The Islam Makhachevs, the Khabib Nurmagomedovs, the Daniel Cormiers, the Luke Rockholds, all these great wrestlers, these great grapplers. He's had all that. Now, is he able...
spend a lot of time on his back, I would imagine.
For sure. How do you go out there and win these rounds? But when the fight is standing,
you don't. But then when you take on the Jonathan Pearces of the world, you're ready for that level.
Yeah, you kick like a mule, right? Now, his takedown defense in the UFC shows 56%, but the guys that have taken him down, he hasn't been taken down since Jason Knight got him down once in 2017. So it's been 4 years since he's been taken down. And the Jason Knight fight, if you remember it, he pretty much, outside of biting Knight, kicked his ass, right? Enrique Barzola took him down 9 times, and Clay Collard, who he also beat Clay Collard, our boy, back in the day, took him down 6 times. So those 2 fights skew all the numbers, right? He got taken down a lot in 2 fights. But outside of that, his takedown defense isn't all that bad. We know he kicks well. His striking's pretty good. And he seems to be he had lost to Sodiq Youssef, got knocked out in that fight. He loses to Omar Morales. He busted his shin up in the first round and then got really tentative. It looked like, this is another gatekeeper fighter, but it looked like he was going down the Ronda Markos route where he's falling apart. But just like a great gatekeeper, he shows you The Justin Janeses of the world? No. These guys don't get by me. And he looked really good in that Janes fight. And so Jonathan Pearce goes out there and tries to wrestle Benitez down and doesn't have the success. Benitez should be able to chop him up, outstrike him, maybe even knock him out. This fight goes into the third round and it's 1-1. Maybe Jonathan Pearce is still alive. I think he's got the grind, he's got the cardio edge. But if Benitez just keeps this thing at range, outstrikes him, he banks up 2 rounds, survives the third, wins a 29-28, or knocks him out before then he would get the victory. So I would have to go Gabriel Benitez minus 200. If you don't want to bet a bunch of favorites, there are a bunch of favorites on this card, and you're looking to back underdogs, along with Cody Stamman, and who else did we outline as the underdog? Cub Swanson, Cody Stamman. Jonathan Pearce does look like an underdog candidate, but my official pick is going to be Gabriel Benitez.
Kai Kamaka can be had for a minus 150. He takes on TJ Brown, who can be had for plus 130. Who you got?
This one's very difficult to cap because they both got bad cardio, so it's like whose bad cardio is going to cost them the fight. So with TJ Brown, the things that we do like about him is that he's one of these guys. He's from Arkansas. He's a training partner of your boy. And he likes to pressure. He likes to pressure. He likes to get the fight to the ground. He likes to grind as much as he's able to. He likes to submit. But if he does get the win in the first round, his game just completely falls apart. And again, he has 8 losses. You look back and you look at most of those 8 losses, and it's the same thing, rinse and repeat. He either gets that finish on you or he starts to fatigue and then fall apart. In his UFC debut, he was looking like he was going to be absolute DraftKings gold. Goes out there and scores, 8 takedowns in the first round against Jordan Griffin. But again, as soon as you don't finish Griffin in the first round, he fatigues. Maybe bad ring IQ, maybe bad game plan, and call it what you want to call it. He comes in again as the favorite over Danny Chavez. We were on Danny Chavez in that spot. But what I didn't like about TJ Brown is that he allowed himself to eat a dozen hard leg kicks, and effectively his lead leg is shot before he even decides to attempt his first takedown attempt. So his last fight against Griffin, all he does is wrestle in the first round. And in his subsequent fight against Danny Chavez, he's reluctant to wrestle at all. That all becomes a bit of an issue. Like, where's his head at? But he leaves Arkansas and he ends up going to Glory MMA and Fitness. So he's training with James Krause and company. And Derek Minner fights a pretty similar game plan where Derek Minner just tries to go out there, bum rush you to the ground, submit you in the first round, and if you survive, he huffs and puffs and falls apart. But you saw with James Krause, Minner's last fight against Charles Rosa, it was like, you know what, I'll get the takedown, and then I'll hold position, try to submit him, but if I can't...
You don't have to overwork. Position over submission.
And that one's interesting to me here, because if TJ Brown goes in there against Kai Kamaka, one would have to imagine he might be able to take down Kai Kamaka, and if he does and he holds position, he'll have success. Kai hasn't looked overly good, right? His loss as an amateur to Kevin Natividad, you saw on the weekend, absolutely get starched. Mm-hmm. Lost to Andrew Natividad, his brother, 3-4 record. He lost to a 2-1 fighter, and then the wins are low level. Did beat Rick James, but not the Rick James that you're thinking of, right? His run was never overly impressive. Now, when he beat Tony Kelly, we got the underdog Tony Kelly. We're 1-1 going in the third. Momentum's on our side. We won the second round. We're looking good. That nut shot.
Bullshit.
Saved him. He comes back and he barely squeaks one out over Tony Kelly, but he got gassed hard after 5 minutes.
He didn't go full Romanov, though. He still continued.
He did continue, but he took the 5 minutes. He got back in, and then as soon as the fight resumes, he just scores a single takedown, holds him down, ends up winning the round, right? Bullshit way out. So now he takes on Jonathan Pearce, and he's effectively a minus 305 favorite against Jonathan Pearce. Fuck, man, what happened? Same thing. First round, he looks okay. Then he tires. Then he starts giving up takedowns. Mm-hmm. Once he's tired, he gives up the takedowns. He's out of it. And Jonathan Pearce ends up just pounding him out. And he is exhausted, tired in that fight. If Krause puts the right game plan together for
Krause
TJ
always
Brown,
puts the right game plan.
Well, then we're looking at ourselves with a live underdog, plus 130. He needs those takedowns. He needs to not gas out, but he's got the submission game. He's got the grappling prowess. He needs to just go out there and fight the proper game plan and have 10 minutes of gas to do it. So, again, I'm going to classify him as live underdog.
Better leadership going over to James Krause, but he's training with Bryce Mitchell. I'm sure had its benefits as well.
And you see, strong, loves the submission game, and similar to Bryce, who might have questionable cardio, it's like you got to elevate yourself. You got to go somewhere and elevate yourself. Bryce is unwilling to do it. This kid goes over to Kansas, and they've got a great vibe going right now. You see all their guys universally.
They're just flooding the UFC cards right now.
Yeah, even Molina on the weekend. And 1-1 going into the third, it's like, okay, well, Krause's magical James Krause third round advice. And it's like, oh, whoa, he looked like a different fighter in the third round, right? Combinations of flowing. They're all in good shape. They've all got good cardio. And I'm sure he's stapling that in them. You want to fight in this camp? take it seriously, show up to practice, get in good shape. If Brown does that, he's not too old to make a one last little serious run at it. If he loses this, he might be cut. If he goes out there and puts it together, he could have one last little run, and I think he's going to be motivated to do that.
We have Loma Lookboonmee taking on Sam Hughes, minus 375 Lookboonmee, plus 310 Hughes. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so you and I, back in the day, this is dating back a long time, man. We used to have this Floyd Mayweather by decision, right? It didn't matter when he fought, didn't matter who he fought. It was an auto bet, Floyd Mayweather, and because he was always the money line favorite, it was an auto bet.
Minus 3,000 favorite, but he would be like minus 165 by decision.
Yeah, always. We used to do it with Adrian Broner as well, but he got real fat and out of shape, fell off a cliff.
Yeah, then you couldn't rely on him to win. No, you couldn't.
But for a long time, it was a money bet. And with Floyd, same thing. Like outside, I lost money on the Victor Ortiz fight when he sucker punched him. Outside of that, and with Conor fight, we're not stupid enough to bet that. Right,
we
exactly.
were just yeah.
So, but when
they were offering minus 300s, minus 400s, even. It's just like you just loaded up on that.
That was the move. It was a move, right? Now, Tecia Torres isn't Floyd. She's not winning all her fights. But the one thing when you bet Tecia is that you always automatically bet Tecia Torres by decision.
Until last time.
Right. And she does have the one submission victory already in the UFC. But she is such a amateur career, pro career, such a decision machine until her last fight, which happened to be against Sam Page.
And she looked like a world beater in that spot. Absolute one-way traffic domination.
Every single punch landed, right? And just tees off on her. Looks like a completely reinvigorated Tecia Torres, but also just makes Sam Hughes look amateurish. And mind you, I have Tecia to win the fight, so I'm feeling good in that regard. But I have the Tecia by decision prop. And she is getting, now she's hurt. She's dropped. The ref's looking at it, but she survives the round. And I'm thinking, you know what? She survived. Take the minute, recompose yourself, go out there. Hopefully Tecia slows down a little bit because she didn't get you out of there. And they look at that cut, and Sam Hughes is like, I'm done. I'm done. It was done. Didn't want to be there. Didn't want to go. So I can never bet on that. I can never jump behind it and now be like, oh, Sam Hughes has got the heart that she's going to fight for my dollar. She got thoroughly outclassed. That's fine. It was a very tough fight for anybody, let alone a debuting fighter. But in the manner of which, look at Jimmy Crute, right? Say what you will about Jimmy Crute. He knows his leg's fucked. His coaching staff knows his leg fucked.
He's trying to push away the doctors and stuff like that.
And he wants to fight. So
he's trying to fake limp. Like, you knew he was.
Yeah.
He was going to have to come out there and shoot for a take. And luckily he's taking on, Anthony Smith. He could have shot like a real lazy
Had he just shot takedowns right from the word go, it might be a different story altogether. Right. Because with one leg, he took him down twice and landed some pretty good ground and pound. But c'est la vie, it's game plans, right?
Yep.
What I'm saying is that I would comfortably bet Jimmy Crute moving forward because one, I know he's got the heart that he's out there to fight. He's a real fighter. He's going to fight for your dollar. And two, it's like, yeah, he tried to make those adjustments. I was going to pull guard, he says on the microphone, like I was going to do whatever I could
to get the fight to the ground because I can't.
Fight. Yeah, but to keep myself in this fight and to extend it and keep the fight going, like that's the kind of stuff you want to look at. One of the reasons that we always look to fade Anthony Pettis is he breaks his hand and he's like, time to get out of here, Duke. Pack the bags, let's go, right? I don't want to bet on that. I don't want to bet on somebody who could be winning a fight and hurt themselves and not want to be there anymore. Because this is the same thing. At the end of the fight, when you see the medical suspensions, they're all hurt. Everyone's hurt. You just fought somebody in a steel cage, man, and you just trained to get here. They're all hurt. It's who's willing to go through with that pain. So even though it was a tough debut, there's not a whole lot I can like from Sam Hughes. With Loma Lookboonmee, she's like born and bred in the fire. A Thai fighter who fights 100 times as an amateur on her way up. Has all that experience. The one knock on her is she's definitely an atom weight. She should be fighting at 105 pounds. Doesn't exist. So she's forced to fight as an undersized 115-pound fighter. But she's nasty in the clinch, man. She's got an excellent clinch game, excellent clinch knees, excellent clinch elbows. At distance, good striking. Doesn't throw out as many kicks as you'd like to see from a Thai fighter. But again, just very, very adequate in the striking department. And I think she's working a lot on the takedown defense, on the grappling, being at Tiger Muay Thai. She was relatively competitive against Angela Hill. And on that basis, last week we talked about Ariana Carolosi, where it's like all we could really gauge on her is that she was somewhat competitive against Angela Hill. I mean, that's got to count for something. And you saw where it's like there are levels to this. she's already fought at that level. When I look at Lookboonmee, I think the same thing. She's already fought at this level. She looks like she's improving, looks like she's getting better, adding that wrinkle to her game. How does this fight play out? Sam Hughes likes to strike. If this fight stays standing, Lookboonmee has the advantage. Sam Hughes tries to engage her and take the fight to the ground, and it spends time in the clinch. We got the clinch advantage. And if Sam Hughes does take her down, she's not doing it for 15 minutes. She's not going out there with a game plan of only taking Lookboonmee down over and over. So got to go with Loma, but the $375 price tag, it's like, good God. And whereas I would normally improve it, Loma by decision, right? Exactly, but I can't trust that anymore because at any point she blasts her in the face with an elbow and cuts her up, then Sam Hughes could all of a sudden not quite want to be there. It
seems
anymore.
like just a great pass.
Yeah, Sam Hughes also blew a 4th-round title fight against Vanessa Demopoulos. Same thing. She wins the first 3 rounds and gets submitted in the 4th, where it's just like she gets tired and her game plan falls apart, gets taken down, gets desperate, gets submitted. It's a nasty submission, inverted triangle, but all the same, there's a precedent there. So that'll be the pick. Lookboonmee, just don't love the price tag.
Andreas Michailidis takes on KB Bhullar, -230 Michailidis, +195 Bhullar. Michailidis lost his debut fight. He was actually looking not too bad in that first round against, what's that guy's name again?
Modestas Bukauskas.
Modestas Bukauskas. Bukaki.
Bukaki Veron.
Who obviously Bukauskas went on in his next fight and got laid out by Jimmy Crute, and I mean there's no real shame in that.
And then he fought Prince Michael.
And he did okay against,
and he may have gotten robbed. Like it was a.
He did okay in that spot,
but it was a close fight.
It was a close fight, and then what? Bukauskas hits him with something like right at the end of round 1.
12-6 elbows to the back of the head.
Yes, and then he that was the cage door open.
Of course,
the guy coming into the cage opens it, so he he thought he could lean back against the cage. And he stumbles, and then they stop it. So he didn't look all that bad. KB Bhullar, Canadian guy, super smart dude, and all of that stuff. Like I liked his interviews that I saw from him coming into his first fight against Tom Breeze. He got dropped by a jab and just completely starched, getting going. So I guess that's why the odds are the way they are in this spot, but. It's hard to put trust in KB Bhullar eating one jab and basically folding. I'll pick Michailidis because I thought at least he looked okay in his debut. But I don't love it. What about you?
Yeah, I got to agree. So like you mentioned with KB Bhullar, he's a really smart guy, and that's actually to his detriment a little bit. So he was an undefeated fighter in Canada, and then in 2013, he's 4-0, right? He watches a teammate at a show get stretchered out and break his jaw. And KB's like, oh my God, like that can happen? Like, I'm not doing this.
This is Michailidis' story on top of that, coming down from 205 against Bukauskas last time out. So.
Yeah, but what I'm saying with KB is he sees an opponent, a teammate get hurt at a show, and it's just like, this isn't for me, man. I don't want to risk injury. So he bails out of the sport effectively for 5 years and came back in 2018. He took off from 2013 to 2018. Comes back in 2018, beats a 4-8 opponent. Okay. Right? Expected. Derek Boyle's on a 6-fight losing streak. Beats him. He's 13-12. Cody Cron's on a 7-fight losing streak. Beats him. He's 16-13. And then he beats Matt Dwyer, right? It's important to note. Beat Dwyer, who had fought in the UFC at 170 pounds. Yep. But KB Bhullar is 6'4". He has a big body. Beating Matt Dwyer, especially it was a 5-round fight, looked okay. Landing a nice little question mark kick as well. It comes to the UFC, it's a big task taking on Tom Breeze on short notice. I mean, it's not exactly a favorable matchup for him, but yeah, he was just out of it of sorts.
Tom Breeze, former welterweight as well, though.
Tom Breeze, former welterweight. And even though this guy's 6'4", it's like he is a thinking man. And as a thinking man, he's not looking to go and pressure you. He's not looking to go out there and, have a slugfest. He's not chasing 50 Gs. 50 Gs is not worth my brain matter. Plus, Cub Swanson's on the card, so what are the chances of me getting the 50 Gs anyways? So you don't even go for it whatsoever. And as a result, I just don't know what his upside is. He's now almost 30 years old. That big layoff, there's a huge gap of competition, right? Just hasn't fought in great guys. And then to see him get absolutely starched by Tom Breeze, like you said, a jab that drops him less than 2 minutes into the first round. It's it's not a particularly good look. Michailidis, 32, but here's a guy that actually left Greece, came down. He's a grappling champion, right? He's currently a BJJ black belt. He had competed extensively in grappling tournaments in Europe, predominantly Greece. He's actually born in Kazakhstan to Greek parents, moved back to Greece, But, I mean, he's gone a long way in improving his skill set. Comes to the UFC, he spent time with Antonio McKee's camp, Team Body Shop, working with those guys, working with Rampage Jackson before he got super fat and out of shape. Spent time at King's MMA with Rafael Cordero. Adds all these wrinkles to his game. Goes on a nice little run here, right? I mean, consider that he would have been on a 8-fight winning streak if not for a loss to Vladimir Meniv, who's a gangster.
Mm-hmm.
Comes to the UFC, gets Bukowskis, is looking good, right? Looks okay. And then, like you said, 12-6 elbows, back of the head. Cage door opens, he falls over, they stop it. He did pull out of a fight with Antonio Arroyo after that, but he's had a year off to, get his head right since the Bukowskis fight. I'm sure he comes out here. I don't think he's chinny. I don't think that KB Bhullar's got the power or the striking offense to go put Michailidis out. I think Michailidis will just be able to chew him out from the outside, output him, land the better strikes. And that's the way I see this one going. So I'm going to have to go with the Greek fighter, Andreas Michailidis, to get the victory. Minus 230 again. Is it a price tag that I love? Absolutely not. But I gotta agree that he's the rightful favorite and that I think he's gonna win the fight. The over 1.5 interesting at minus 135. So I know that we're all laughing at KB Bhullar getting jabbed in less than 2 minutes and knocked out, but he's also just went 5 rounds in the fight before that with the UFC veteran. So Michailidis, he does show some decent first round finishes on his record. You know what? He shows a ton of first round finishes on. Yeah, exactly. He knocked out your boy Marcel Fortuna on Titan FC 54, spinning back kick. So it's like, yeah, do you want to go down that road? Probably not. But
Marcel
he's
Fortuna
the better striker.
Knocked out,
Anthony Hamilton,
Anthony Bumbleton, the worst chin in UFC.
Yeah, but he fought at heavyweight, right? And Michailidis is now fighting at 185 pounds.
It'll be. With Michailidis, I feel like moving down from 205 to 185, you should probably watch the weigh-ins before you really do anything on this fight, to be perfectly honest. Because that, dropping those 20 pounds is hard for the best of them. And finally, the bane of Cody's existence, Luke Sanders, takes on Felipe Colares. Luke Sanders minus 140. Colares plus 120. They're giving you a fair price on this guy. Can you trust him though? Actually, the only thing I bet on this entire card so far before talking to you was I took the under 2.5 rounds here because I caught him a plus 145. I see it starting to move to like plus 120, plus 130. I think it's going to continue to go around because it's a Luke Sanders fight. Is he going to, he could look great for a long time. Eventually, he's going to do something stupid, compromise himself, and get knocked out. That's just the 100%.
Way. He does me dirty every time.
That's just what happens with Luke Sanders. What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, so how stupid would I have to be to bet Luke Sanders again? But, I mean, looking at the tape, it seems like it's a spot for Luke Sanders. Minus 140, price tag. You never get price tags like that on Luke Sanders, really. Only he's so untrustworthy. Has blown so many spots that you, at this point, all the skills there, but you're very willing to look aside. I mean, we all know about his personal history, breaking up with the hottest star in WWE wrestling.
Did he break up with her?
I'm told.
Wow,
that's what I'm told.
Bad decision.
Yeah, he wanted to focus on his career, and then his career middles out after that. But man, so he's on a great run. He signed with the UFC. He's undefeated. Beats Maximo Blanco. It's a great win. The Yuri Alcantara fight. He looks like a top 5 guy. He 10-8s Yuri Alcantara. He's smashing him. First round, oh my God. Second round, he's killing the man. And then he just rolls onto a knee bar and submits him. One of the biggest comebacks you'll ever see, next short of Chike Congo, Pat Barry. But it was just like, oh my God. And that's how he loses his first fight ever. So he gets Andre Sugmantath. Wins the first round, looking good in the first round. And then the second round, why is he standing with him still at this point? Don't know. Counter right, boom, out. It's like, oh man, now he's been submitted and he's been knocked out. But he won the first round of both those fights, and the skill appears to be there. Beats Patrick Williams, but didn't really look all that good. The Ronnie Yaya fight, bad game plan. Gets heel hooked again by Yaya. So submission defense has been a bit of an issue. Looked fucking awesome against Henan Barao. And then the Nate Maness fight.
The corpse of Henan Barao.
Yeah, fair enough. He looks good against the corpse of Henan Barao. Beats him up. And then the Nate Maness fight. It's classic Luke Sanders. He looks awesome in the first round. He hurts him. He drops him. He's got him stung. He's looking very fast. He's looking very fluid. Sharp with the left hand. Southpaw stance. And then it's like durability, man. Like the guy, eventually he gets caught. When he gets caught, he doesn't wear the damage good.
He goes into berserker mode.
Nasty Nate drops him once clean, drops him the second time clean, and then it's a whole mixture. The Yuri fight, he just gets straight up submitted, and the Sugmantath fight, he just gets straight up clipped. And then this Nate Maness fight, he gets clipped and then submitted.
So why is this total then? 2.5 rounds for him to make a mistake or to find the finish? Because he is a potent finisher when he's on his best.
He's a potent finisher, but I think the reason why is that Felipe Colares appears to just have like a cast iron chin, right? So he's 9-2, but both of his losses are by decision. Against Geraldo Freitas, he gets out grappled, but he doesn't get submitted, doesn't get knocked out. It's the Montel Jackson fight where Montel unloads on this guy, and his chin looks fantastic, right? So his ability to absorb damage is why he's a live underdog here, is that Luke Sanders is probably going to whip his ass in the first round. In fact, I would rather live bet Felipe Colares after the first round if he got out of it, because you're going to get a much better price tag than plus 120. Cool.
Yeah.
And he is durable. Now, what Sanders needs to do is go out there and, again, fight a good game plan, which he never does. But if he was to, he is a better striker, and he's a much better wrestler. When I look back on Corrales and I look at the tape on him, is that Geraldo de Freitas took him down 6 times. Domingo Pilarte took him down twice. Montel Jackson took him down 11 times. He shows a 34% takedown defense. So Sanders, who does have a wrestling advantage...
But you're going to rely on him
I
to
know,
go do
you'd
that?
have to rely on him. Brother, you are reading my mind. You are reading my mind for sure, is that you can't rely on him to do anything. The skill's there. The ability's there. But is he actually going to use that skill and that ability? Now, he'll have pockets of success standing, and he'll have pockets of success on the ground. It's whether you tie that all together. Now, here's the reason why we started this off by saying I was going to take Luke Sanders, and I am going to take Luke Sanders, is that in order to exploit this guy, you do need some pop in those punches. And from Felipe Colares, it's not there. The Geraldo de Freitas fight, 15 minutes, he lands 21 strikes. The Domingo Pilarte fight, he lands 23. And the Montel Jackson fight, he landed 7. They all went the distance, Paul. 7, 23, 21. In order to knock out Luke Sanders, you're actually going to have to hit him, and you're going to have to hit him with something somewhat meaningful. So if he's unable to get Luke off of him, then Luke's just going to have his way, march him down, beat him up, and then at that point, you're not going to hit that under 2.5. It'd be Luke Sanders cruising to a decision. Luke by decision, over 2.5. So the over 2.5 is actually minus 170. Doesn't actually look good, but I would take Luke Sanders, and I'd be willing to wager if Sanders does win that he probably does win a decision, wins the first 2 rounds, and then coasts the third and doesn't get finished.
All right, that's a lot of hopeful.
Hopeful with
wishing,
Luke
wanting
Sanders too. My God.
You got any hot PFL picks here?
I haven't really.
There's nothing that jumps
card,
off the board,
because
there's some people asking about it. And it's just like there's nothing. There is no Clay Collard for me, but we're in the process of like getting ready to move here, so it's. This UFC card this week, plus the PFL haven't been getting the same level of attention from me.
But just to rifle it through really quick, because it's going to be another, you're going to want a couple favorites. It's just putting the right ones together. So Camozzi versus Sordi. Sordi should win. He's definitely looking good his last couple of fights, but I don't love it that Camozzi could just wear him down and it'd be a greasy fight. So at the 355, that'd be like potential apple pie shitter. I wouldn't love it, right? Rory McDonald, don't pull Luke Sanders, just take down City. This should be a fucking walk in the park. Curtis Millender cannot wrestle. Sabah Hamasi looked like, a D1 All-American, a national champion against him. All of his fights in the UFC that he lost, he could not literally takedown defense, non-existent. Rory should just walk right through him at 5-1 and still parlay piece. Nikolai Alexikin, former ONE FC veteran. This guy's cast iron, dude. Super tough. He's one of these like Sambo guys that can wrestle. Tough Russian guy. A lot of experience. He'll be able to get these takedowns on Sadhu Usai, Swedish Muay Thai fighter. Once he gets these takedowns, it's just going to be ground and pound, grind him. So even though he's minus 290, he's going to be the play as well. Ray Cooper should walk right through Jason Ponnet, French striker, 30 pro fights. Like he's a 19-10 journeyman. Ray Cooper, at his best, walks through a guy like this. He is 650, and it is striker versus striker. But Cooper could also take him down, and it'd be an easier path to victory. Vinny Magalesh, so untrustworthy that if anything, you would just take the shot on Jordan Young to survive the first round and just hit him in the head once. Cesar Mutanch, again, he generally has a bad chin and is not super durable, but this is a stylistical matchup that favors him here. He gets his fight to the ground. He's got much better jiu-jitsu than Nick Roerick, so at minus 170. He's not parlay piece, though. Antonio Carlos Jr. should smoke Tom Lawler. He really should. Tom Lawler's
been professional,
exactly.
Not the right type of professional wrestling.
USADA positive test, 3 years of pro wrestling, ballooned up to like 230 pounds.
I assumed
tons of injuries.
I assumed he's never going to come back.
37 years old, and he's filthy Tom Lawler. Carlos Jr., for as big of a bust as he is, probably shouldn't have been cut from the UFC, and very much peels Tom Lawler to the ground, takes his back here. So again, he's going to be parlay piece. I haven't really been able to look at this Hamlet as much as I'd want to, but I would auto-fade Dan Spawn in a lot of spots, so makes sense to me. And Zeffirino versus T-Bow. I was feeling T-Bow. I feel like it was plus 110 at the opener, so you could have got dog money on him. It's starting to even up a little bit now. But Joanne Zeffirino, you know, he's the bigger body. He's a little bit younger. They both have decent jiu-jitsu black belts. T-Bow is a Ricardo Laborio guy, formerly at ATT. Zeffirino is, I believe, Renzo Gracie. So if it ends up being grappler versus grappler, Zeffirino could have a lot of success. They both have bad gas tanks. They're both a little bit older, but, you know, that one's probably a pass. If you're betting it right now before the odds start to get crazy, I would put Rory McDonald in a parlay. Rory, let me just parlay.
Rory, Nikolai, Ray Cooper III, and Antonio Carlos Jr.
Yeah, you put Ray.
That's parlay pays plus 141.
Ray, Rory, and Antonio is minus 125.
I mean, it was dog city last week at PFL, but
well, right. That's why you don't want to get the wrong dogs. And then I would put Nikolai Alexikin on that second line, and then you're getting plus 142. Those four, those are the ones that you're looking at. I'll update it as anything becomes more prevalent. I haven't seen weigh-ins as well, so we'll see there. But what you like to see out of PFL the first time around is that you're getting some of these upsets out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all hindsight fights. So Bubba Jenkins had already wrestled Lance Palmer twice in college and whipped his ass both times. Mm-hmm. So he went out there not looking to fight. He went out there looking to wrestle because he knew he could wrestle him, and he did. So in hindsight, everyone should have bet Bubba Jenkins, right? He was a live underdog at that money. Now you got, what's his name, the Brazilian kid, 55er out of ATT. Doesn't matter. He fights Marcin Held, right? And again, Marcin Held is one of these guys that is a career bust. But you know if he goes out there and he takes Nate down, it's like he is Marcin Held. He's a strong guy, 55. He's got good wrestling, and he's got really good BJJ. So when he's able to start going out there and getting these takedowns on him, it's like he's just going to grind this pace down. Grinds the pace down, gets the win. And then we didn't get fooled by the Anthony Pettis one. We saw that one. But as a whole, you have three.
That was my only bet on that card.
You have three huge favorites.
I saw a lot of people on the Bubba Jenkins one, though.
6-1 favorite. Yeah, again, because if you spent more time, you're not trying to research UFC and research the Bellator card and research this and that and trying to take a break and you got a family, all these different things, and you actually just sat there and researched the PFL, you would have come to the conclusion that the line's off. Look at this card, right? How many 3-1 favorites are on this card? One. The PFL card, it's like there's 4 or 5 of them, right? So are they live? Do they have shots? The fact that people don't have time to properly tape study it is the reason Clay Collard
and that's the reason
is
why
such a big underdog.
And why you're getting value on a
because
bunch of these
lines.
Anthony
Pettis. You know Anthony Pettis. The casual person is just like, Pettis is on this card? Oh, man. He's really fallen from grace. But who's he fighting? Clay Collard?
Oh,
Never heard of him.
Let me look up that guy. Oh, well, he lost to this guy and this guy. It's just like, yeah, but you didn't follow through with what he's been doing since then. And a lot of his fights were pretty competitive, even in the ones that he lost.
Yeah. But again, it's like Anthony Pettis was a UFC world champion, and even his losses in the UFC is he completely shot? Wikipedia says he won his last fight. It's like, dog, he lost the first round to Alex Morono, sorry.
Alex Morono.
Yeah. Brandon Moreno. Imagine that. You know what? I wouldn't even find it shocking at this point in Pettis' career. He lost the first round to Alex Morono, like he's done. The UFC paid him $280,000 for that fight. Do you think they were looking to bring him back? No. So they released him. So PFL signs him on the pretense of you could win $1 million. But it's like, I don't know, man. Clay Collard it was a poor man's version of what Edson Barbosa did. Just march him back, man. March him back, lay those hands on him, cause him to doubt himself. It's not often that you're going to hit those big fat underdogs, so that felt nice. And then we had a Randy Brown by submission prop. That felt nice. And then the parlays just caved in.
I hit Molina. I hit...
the prelims are looking good, man.
Prelims are crushed it. Molina, Vargas,
I had that fight go decision.
I was starting to look at the rest of the path, and I was just like, I'm going to be rich after tonight. Mm-hmm. And then the main card ate into those profits quite a bit. But it was still a winning week. Thank you, Clay Collard, really.
Yeah, and realistically, that was like a magical card, you know? The fights were theoretically one-sided and didn't last all that long, but they were all very unique moments. The main event, pretty crazy. Kamaru Usman is maybe a career best performance knocking out Masvidal, but that KO, man, the way the sweat flies off George's head, the way that he absolutely sleeps Masvidal, super necessary with that follow-up ground and pound.
Somebody asked him about that afterwards.
For Rose to head kick communism right in the head, you know, and pull one over for, like I tweeted out, capitalism wins again. Rose Namajunas getting the job done, but just a highlight reel head kick. A huge moment for Rose Namajunas, who's a fighter who's paid her dues, so you can't help but actually feel like, even though you lost, I lost bets on that when I lost money, you can't help but feel happy for her, right? She's an OG, she's earned everyone's respect. And then Valentina Shevchenko, like maybe another career best performance. Everyone was excited. That was like
best performance from Val.
This one could be more competitive at least, and it's like she made it look easier than any other fight she's had.
I know. I thought that she was like the...
It looked like Cachoeira all over again.
I thought that she was like. I stayed away from that fight completely.
And then you got a broken leg. And
watching her look like the female reincarnation of Habib, just absolute domination. I mean, the only fight for Valentina is Nunes. Do the third.
Yeah, but none of those. I don't think they're in a rush to do it, but like that's really like she's gonna kill everybody at 125 right now. Yeah, I would agree. I don't know who's gonna fight her, but again, like Dana said, there's always somebody that's coming up the ranks that they're gonna slot into that spot. It's a shame that a girl like, I know she fights at 115, but Tatiana Suarez, right? If she could have just not been injured, stayed on the course, that at least she's got that like wrestling where it could, it could be a factor.
It's at a level that Valentina, I'm sure she worked on it and she's gotten good, but this is Olympian level wrestling. Like Tatiana should have the edge.
Right. Outside of her, it's like, you know, a girl like Mackenzie Dern on paper has the kind of grappling, but she ain't getting that fight to the ground.
No.
And she ain't standing with her. So, but again, she's improving in all those areas, but someone always comes around. Valentina's 33, so she dominates for another 2 years, and then at 35, somebody comes out of the woodwork. But it's just the way the sport goes, right? Father Time, or in this case, Mother Time, wins outright in the end. So we'll have to see.
That's right on brand with our last time in this very studio, Father Time.
Yeah, Father Time.
It's ran its course, but the show will not go anywhere. We're gonna be back every single week. I mean, you had such like a heartfelt goodbye speech last week. I don't know how we top it, to be perfectly honest.
I know. And Pat wanted us to keep it. He's got some shit he's got to do.
Yeah, he's got some shit to do.
We'll get out of here. But thanks for the memories. Thanks for the beers. It's been a pleasure. We're going to continue to do the show. But yeah, it's been 7 years, man. Started in April of 2014. 7 years doing the show in studio. Prior to that, I met Paul Shaughnessy. I went to College of Sports Media. And
everyone else was talking about hockey in the radio booth, and me and Cody would talk about the upcoming UFC card.
Not true.
No, it was
Pat would talk
true.
about
he
would talk
hockey.
like baseball or something,
golf and baseball and that jazz. But we talked fights, man. It was my college buddy, the only guy in college that wanted to talk fights. So we would do like radio roundtables, and I don't consider that in the time we did shows together. This is all like 2011, right? We would do shows together in college, and both graduate, go to College of Sports Media, and Pat, same thing, man. I met you guys both. You and I gelled right off the get-go. We were friends. Pat didn't gel with Pat right off the get-go. Pat's a polarizing character, right? You either love Pat Mayo or you hate Pat Mayo. And I think oftentimes the first time you meet Pat Mayo, you're going to get one of these...
I think that's less true these days.
No, let me finish, man. Let me finish.
Pre-marriage Pat Mayo was a wild man. A shit-eating wild man.
By Canadian Thanksgiving of that first year at CSM, I remember talking to my dad and being like, oh, Pat's the quarterback on our CSM pickup football team. He's a total dick, whatever. He's really imposing character, whatever. By like midway through that year, Pat was a buddy of mine. By the end of that year, Pat was a good friend of mine. After college, Pat goes his own way, goes to New Jersey. You and I got a job at Fight Network, so we're working in Toronto. Pat's gone. I'm living at Tap Out. There's a gym. Tap Out, the brand, owns a gym in Burlington. I'm living like in a small office space above it. I shower in like, this is after hours. I got a key to the place after the hours, right? It closed at 10 o'clock. I have to go to like the communal shower for like gym members, shower there, small little kitchenette, stay there for 3 months. And Pat's coming back from New Jersey, moving back to Toronto, apparently looking for a roommate. So I link up with him thinking, you know what? Good friend of mine, but also this is a guy that's going to elevate me as a person and as someone looking to make a career out of this. And it did, man. It did. We moved in together. We stayed together for 2.5 years. Great fucking time. Seeing his work ethic. Seeing this guy goes to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, wakes up at 5:30 in the morning, churning out articles, making videos for every site, promoting his own brand. All the work this guy put in it. It was just like, I would just want to replicate that shit, man. So then you and I pitched the idea to you. I'm like, let's just do a show, man. And you actually weren't going for it at first. You were like, dude, people don't give a shit. People don't give a shit. But we were doing a show. We were talking about news, me, you, and Kent. talking about news.
Nobody gave a shit about that.
Who the fuck gave a shit about that? And that's what I said. I said, no one gives a shit anyways. And Fantasy Sports Network launches. That's why Pat came back from New Jersey. They launched. He's got like executive decision-making skills, what they want to put on air. And they're putting the sin bin on air. So I know we can get on air. So I'm just like, dude, let's just do it.
What's the sin
Main
bin?
event, Cody's man in the sin bin. It's a great premise. You just throw somebody in the sin bin every week. This guy fucking sucks. He's in the sin bin. So it was funny shit. Anyways, I pitch it. Kent fans out after like 5-6 episodes. Sean McCormick filled in for an episode or two. And then it was just like 7 years of you and I. When you and Pat, or you got released from Fight Network, Pat ended up quitting on his own. It was just like, how does the show survive? But there Pat was with the platform, which is the reason why we're here.
Pat revived it again.
Which is the reason that you're wearing the hat. And it was like, we took like maybe a 2-month hiatus in between. You were doing
I
some
was
car
salty.
dealership
I got
shit.
fired. I remember you were telling me, you're like, oh, you're allowed to come in and do the show. I was just like, what? Come in, do the show? For the company that just fired me for free?
Well, they were like, we want to keep the show going. I'm like, well, why did you fire him then? And they're like, well, if he wants to come in, we'll, whatever, pay you $50 an episode.
They never said that to me.
Well, at that point, you wouldn't have taken the money because you're a proud guy. I remember just being like, why don't you just hop on unemployment for a little bit? And you're like disgusted with the idea and being like, no, I'm going to go, you got a job parking cars because that's how proud you are. And that's how you were raised. And I knew your family and it's the same thing, hard work ethic. But like, you wouldn't take the free handout. So the show's been a grind, such as life. We've grinded through. I just want to say thanks to Pat for always being there and having the platform and teaching me so much. I want to thank you for being one of my best friends, one of my guys that I can watch fights with, talk fights with, and again, man, it's been an extreme ride. And then for the fans that have been there from the get-go, but more so the last 2 years is how the show's kind of been blowing up. And for anybody that watches the show that's got their own show, right? Just know it just doesn't get popular in a year. It doesn't get just popular in 2 years. Like you go through the grind. You have good nights, you have bad nights, you have people that
fans
support
come,
you.
fans go.
Fans come, fans go. You get a follower, you lose a follower, but it's just do it for yourself and just keep going. You're proud of your work. Stay humble, and that wins outright. So again, to all the guys like the Daniel Levy's of the world and Brett Appley. Remember, Brett Appley took our spot on Fantasy Sports Network when you guys got fired. And it's just like those guys have paid their dues. Those guys have paid their respects. Those guys have been there for a long time. So anyways, yeah, I'm just proud of what we've accomplished. I know that the show does go on. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a funeral for the Dogger Pass podcast.
This is not a goodbye. This is a see you later.
Yeah, it's just a see in a different version for now. We'll get a couple live in-studio shows per year, and the war wagon rolls on.
Oh, yeah, we're not stopping. We're not fucking leaving.
Cody, I wanted to thank you, too. But mainly because remember that time you threw the tequila bottle out of our window? You just did a complete 180 at like 3 o'clock in the morning with I'd say still quarter full tequila bottle, hucked it at we had like a Juliet balcony. So it's just like glass all around it somehow. It goes directly through the window, hits the U-Haul truck across the street on the windshield, and it didn't shatter. And poor Mike Clay was so terrified he had to go.
Oh yeah. So Mike Clay came down, and he's a big shot too. He does like the NFL Madden video games.
ESPN's Mike Clay.
And they were like, Pat, here's $500. Go and show Mike Clay a good time. So we go to a dive bar. So $500 goes real far.
He invites us idiots over who are just getting lit.
And so I think
he had a good time until Cody. You probably terrified him.
I threw a bottle of tequila off of a 9-story balcony and smashed a U-Haul truck. It actually ricocheted right off the top.
Yeah, it didn't smash somehow.
Yeah. I knew there was no pedestrians in the bottom of the street. I don't even know why I threw it. I threw your hat off moments before. I was just real booze at the time.
I mean, it happens.
And that's why I give Zoo Wrong a pass, right? Because, again, he's 21 years old. He loses a fight to the UFC against Kazula Vargas. It is what it is. I was selling weed, hanging out at Pat. We leased an apartment together, and weed was illegal. Whatever, there was some decent money in it. A lot of people wanted to buy it, and it was like that. That's what kept me afloat, right? So to go from that to where I am now, to build stuff up, it's been a long journey. It's been cool, and yeah, we're gonna keep going up and up from here. But I know we're not allowed to shake hands.
If I were to want weed, I couldn't get some from you right now.
Well, there's so many dispensaries now.
Kidding. Yeah,
literally,
they took your jib.
They took my jib. No. I just got so heat because people would come up to you at work and be like, hey, what time are you off? And you'd be like, 5 o'clock. And they'd be like, mind if I swing by? like literally your bosses are there and shit.
Yeah, and then you're like, no, I think Pat's at the apartment right now. He'll help you out. Be like,
yeah, there's a
just show up to the door. Be like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah, just be like, yeah, there's a scale in the corner of the room, and a quarter pound is weigh it out yourself. I don't know. I sold to buddies of mine, so it wasn't like super sketchy in that regard. But dude, there was money in weed, man. Think about it. Zhu Rong got paid $12,000. It was like, you'd have to fight. I won 2 fights in the UFC selling weed that year. You know what I mean? It was much better than fighting Kazula Vargas in the octagon, let me tell you.
100%. All right, we're just about out of time here, but before we go, hit him with the PRP.
We're going to go with Yuri at the top, Cub Swanson, dog number 1, Ion Cutelaba, Sean Strickland, Cody Stamman, dog number 2, Poliana Boetlho, Pinheiro, Gabriel Benitez, TJ Brown, dog number 3, Loma, Michailidis, and Luke Sanders. So, 13 fights, 3 underdogs. Again, there's a couple other ones that are live in these spots. You know, maybe Jonathan Pearce, maybe a Felipe Corrales. I'm sure the Corrales one, just like every time. Just like when I bet Bum Fabinski, you know, my heart got the better of me, and you were too smart for it. And you're probably too smart for Luke Sanders in this spot, too. But
no, I can't do that.
I
took the under because I fully expect him to do something stupid, but who knows?
My God, Luke Sanders.
Or something stupid to happen in that fight. It'll look like I'm going to lose, and then all of a sudden,
so are we taking any breaks between shows? So you guys are moving.
That's not the plan.
No. Next week's going to be a show.
It's going to be a show. You guys will just call me in. Okay, yeah, perfect.
We'll make it work.
We might have the studio set up by next Wednesday. We can just do a video show next week if everything works.
That's the plan. The plan is it'll just be you on, Zoom or Skype or whatever, and back at her.
All right.
Next week's card's actually
just get your internet hardwired and you'll be good.
Next week's card's actually pretty baller. It's a really nice offering next week from the UFC. But anyway, that's it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For Cody Saftic and Pat Mayo, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.